All right, folks, welcome back. Welcome back. We got a good one for you. We got a good one. We have the finance wonderkin. Could have been the next Jim Simons, RIP, but decided to go into DTC and now is sailing a ship of his own, hailing from Chirac, Illinois. Drew Fallon, welcome to the show.
Thank you, sir. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah. And the puppy's birthday. Everybody loves puppies. You got a dog recently. What, 2 years ago, a year and a half, something like that?
No, his first birthday is tomorrow.
Oh,
Shout
okay.
out.
Yeah, super recent.
Yeah, shout out Wilbur. The
Wilbur.
little wiener dog turns 1 tomorrow.
Yeah, amazing. Those dachshunds are incredible. For people that don't know you, that live under a rock, let's jump into a little bit of bio, but I really want to get into kind of what you're working on now and then also just some machinations on the market. You've been, to my heart's delight, crushing the content, dude. I've been
Thanks.
loving
Hard,
the
man.
feed. It's hard.
A lot of work.
It's worth it, but it is so hard. But I want to get into that HIMS thread, and you've had a couple other bangers. But yeah, so for people that don't know, how did you get into e-commerce? Give us your kind of elevator pitch story, and then what are you doing now?
Yeah, so I started in I was probably like 18, like freshman in college, back like in the good old days. You remember throw $1 into
Right.
Facebook, get $4 back. Like Oberlo, like the
Ah,
true like drop ship stuff. I started doing that like pretty early on, probably, I don't know, 8 years ago, and messed around with all that through college. I graduated in 2019, which was when Mad Rabbit Tattoo launched, which with my friends from college, Oliver and Salam, were like the proper founders. I got involved in that business extremely early on, probably like their first 6 months. I started doing stuff with them. And we continued to run Mad Rabbit on the side after graduation. So the three of us graduated in 2019. I went on to do banking at an equity capital markets desk, specifically research on e-commerce. I think they wanted me to come research their equities in e-commerce because I had done my own e-commerce and was currently doing it. I don't know if you knew that. And then Mad Rabbit grew a ton during COVID. And that was the year that Salam, Oliver, and I decided to take the full plunge.
yeah.
So quit the bank, dove in to be the founding CFO of Mad Rabbit full time. We grew that business. People seem to know about it at this point. We were an 8-figure beauty brand, Series A back, raised a bunch of money, grew a bunch of sales, launched Walmart at the end of last year. And as part of that experience, I saw the problems with a one product Shopify store doing
Yeah.
100K a year, and then the problems with a 25 product Shopify doing or omnichannel store doing 8 figures a year. And the one thing that I think always really stood out to me was just like the pure lack of like financial rigor, knowledge, and infrastructure in this ecosystem, in this industry is so insane to me. And it's for a good reason. Honestly, ecom has been like a growth industry forever, right? From '06 to 22, just up and to the right. And then in 2022, when ecom for the first time ever, I think that was the year where it didn't grow year over year. And
Yep.
all of a sudden, all the margin starts getting ripped out of the system and everyone starts going under. The capital markets are extremely dry. And I recognize this like extraordinary need for like visibility into business performance from a financial lens, being able to understand unit economics, map cash flows, understand forecasts. And it was really like my expertise, right? So everything that I was doing in my prior days, in my prior companies, from like the financial lens, a lot of people needed help with. And I was getting dozens of requests for consulting stuff, which I had zero
Yeah.
bandwidth to do. And so this idea for Iris started where the whole thesis is centered around the idea that a modern consumer brand, like every data point, every transaction occurs digitally, right? So even if you're selling in like a Walmart or a Target, like
Yeah.
EDI systems are in the cloud. Your payroll is on the internet now with like Gusto and Rippling, like Shopify and Amazon are certainly on the internet, Facebook, Google, TikTok, etc. And so the problem of understanding profitability in real time is nothing more than a data orchestration problem. And so if you can connect all those silos and centralize data, you can understand how your business is performing. And then from there, you can plan accordingly. And so Iris was born, I don't know. I left Mad Rabbit in August of 23. We raised like a little pre-seed round. We raised a couple $1 million, and we've been off to the races. So yeah, it's been pretty fun to help people with this problem because it's really bad, man. Or people don't really know what they're doing on this side of the house. They're good ads people and they're good creative, and that's all you need to be to a certain extent.
Yeah.
But then eventually the cash flow matters.
Yeah. One, definitely hot off a fundraise when you hear data orchestration. So well done there, sir. Well done. I'm in. What's the minimum? Let me get in this
Yeah,
round.
you didn't let me
Yeah.
say AI.
Yeah. Oh, you didn't say it. Okay. Yeah.
AI
We're
powered data orchestration.
there. Then now we're,
Yeah.
and is that Sequoia out there? Wait a second.
Team.
Yeah. No, dude, it's very interesting. And I guess because this is your world and I came from like an adjacent world. I actually wanted to be an investment banker, then I didn't, and then I ended up just getting an economics degree instead of whole hog in finance. But so my move over wasn't that jarring, but there's some people that are just great at product, like you said, great at selling, great at like just figuring it out, that have no idea what the fuck's going on. And I had a great finance professor. He said there's two ways not to be poor. One, be really great with your finances, or two, just make so much money that it just doesn't matter. And I think there was that bull market where it was just like, you're just making so much money that so much is just falling down. Like it doesn't matter your OpEx or what there was so much making it down to the net that you're just
Mhm.
like, dude, I'm putting it in the walls right now. But now that environment has shifted, you're seeing a lot of the arbitrage eroded in the ads market, which is obviously knock-on effects in the acquisition costs. Are you seeing more people coming hip to like, oh man, like you just said, eventually cash flow matters. And I think that's a dirty little secret in D2C is that yes, it's not that much capital to start, but it's a very capital intensive business.
D2C is an extraordinarily capital intensive business. It's actually part of the reason I got out of it. It's the only business model in the world where you can make money and lose money at the same time. So like if I make 10% net income on my P&L, but I got to throw 15% of revenue back into inventory, like I lost money, like I made money, but I lost money. So, and that's like where where the shit hit the fan, pardon my French. I've been told to swear less on podcasts.
Oh, dude,
Um,
this is not the podcast you need to do that. I will
that's
definitely
like where the
triple
shit
you
hits
up.
the fan, which is like when you're not generating enough margin to cover any sort of like working capital requirement, so then you end up like not being like cash flow positive enough to like actually continue to scale up. But people just have a really hard time like reconciling like their contribution margin and like cash flow. And everyone's so upset with contribution margin right now, which is like part of why Iris is like being extremely well received. But what the marketer doesn't necessarily understand is when the marketer is saying contribution margin, that's just a proxy for cash flow. Because of what I can tell from the unit economic level, like AOV, COGS, and CAC, for me as the marketer, that's where my job ends. I don't do like the OpEx, I don't do the inventory ordering. And because our system is dominated by marketers, they've latched on this idea of contribution margin and cash flow, when in
Yes.
reality, it's just one and the same.
Yeah. One's a function of the other.
Yeah.
Can you walk people that aren't as Doogie Howser? Nobody gets this reference, but it's the perfect reference for you because you're so young and so brilliant. How, like what contribution margin means, and just give us that finance 101, and then what you mean when you say cash flow. And the other thing is for people following along at home, a P&L is a profit loss statement. So when you get into finance, there's the big three of the profit loss, the balance sheet, and the cash flow statement. Anyways, that aside, before I want you to define contribution margin for the listeners, because then I actually have a question about contribution margin for you because D2C sometimes does it weird and there's this cost of delivery. Anyways, let's start at the simple how it should be. And then I want
Yeah.
to ask you about that because I've always had weird times reconciling because there's almost like marketer accounting and then like gap accounting.
Yeah, I would actually appreciate the opportunity to define this. So contribution margin is anything that moves, any expense that moves with revenue. So any sort of variable expense.
Yep.
Another nerdy finance dude name for contribution margin is net variable cash flow. So emphasis on the variable cash flow, variable. So this includes most things that are associated with the cost of the sale, including shipping, including product costs, including advertising. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, this is because this is where I was heading because that's what so
Yeah.
for people like an example, right? So I'm selling marble busts of Drew Fallon's face, and they cost $1,000, and then I have a COGS or a cost of goods sold. It costs me $100 per unit, and then you would take out in that sense your CAC as well as the delivery fees.
Yeah, and yes,
So like your
and
pick and pack and shipping,
yeah.
but you
So
internalize the freight differently, obviously.
so you can record freight in a number of different ways. It should be included in the contribution margin as a part of cost of goods sold because it is variably rolling off the balance sheet into the P&L as an expense. The same way that COGS, you can capitalize freight expense, right? If it costs you $1 to make the product and then $1 to ship it, like that product costs you $2.
Yeah, to deliver it essentially.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Not because I think that's where people get where they cost of goods sold is that's not super aligned with kind of how marketers think. Okay,
It's
yeah. So
not,
take
but let me interject real quick
yeah,
because
expand.
the whole purpose of contribution, so that there's two types of accounting, right? There's financial accounting and there's managerial accounting. Financial accounting is like what like public companies publish their financials under it, like a very equity analysis, investment banker type framework for analysis.
There's frameworks, rules, assumptions that people need to
Yeah,
adhere to if you're going to submit this.
like I covered e-commerce businesses and not online advertising in my Wall Street days. Contribution margin is not a concern. It's not a thing. It's never been set on Wall Street. However, internally, it's an extremely important metric. This is because it's part of the accounting, the management accounting school of thought, which is where like the whole purpose of contribution margin is used in a break-even analysis. Okay, so like the break-even analysis is break-even is achieved when the contribution margin equals the fixed expenses, and the fixed expenses are fixed expenses. The whole point of tracking contribution margin is because you're performing the crossing of the lines
Trying to
analysis type
find the
thing where it's like
equilibrium.
yeah, it's literally like accounting 300 in college. Like you
Yeah.
take a managerial accounting class and they teach you about the margin of safety and contribution margin and how you as a manager should budget your contribution margin to whatever the overhead of your department is. And so anybody who thinks differently is wrong, honestly. They
You
just
said
like
you weren't going to swear on here.
I didn't swear. Yeah, no, if you don't think that's right, you just I don't know, like you disagree with the general consensus of accounting as a whole, which is like a very
Yeah.
established like practice. So, yeah, no, it's like it'd be like saying like the sky isn't blue. So like yeah, sure, go ahead, but like we don't believe you kind
Yeah.
of thing.
And so the reason that your contribution margin is going to be so important is because then that's where you can start to back into some kind of unit economic style calculations, right?
Contribution margin tells you where your sales should be at in
Yeah.
order to break even. So it's actually like a proxy for a sales goal. There's no point in running a department that has $1 million in overhead at 500K in contribution margin because you're losing money. If the contribution margin goal is equal to the OpEx, the overhead at the break even point, the sales has to be at a certain point where that's the contribution margin that we're generating. So it's actually we should find if you I wonder if you like Google contribution margin graph, you'll probably see yeah, I wish I could share the screen. If you just Google contribution margin graph,
Yeah.
it's always demonstrated in like the sense of a break even point. So it's like this like triangle.
Yep. Yep.
Do you see what I'm talking about?
Yeah. So your sales, your variable costs, and your contribution.
Yeah. So yeah, I think it's like a pretty simple idea that some people have like misconstrued for whatever reason. Like, if you just click on this link, it's literally called accounting for dummies.
Yeah. Because where I would always get tripped up is shipping and handling. Because I've heard of people doing it different ways. So I'm glad that there's that consensus from you that it's how much or a variable, because that does vary for me.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so but I had like other people be like, no, I actually just have it in my shipping because it's actually an operational expense. Anyways.
I actually think so. I've been meaning to get this out for a while, but I've got a whole thesis about like why venture capital and D2C combusted. And that's like very core to it, where these D2C brands, in early stage investors were trying to inflate gross margins by including shipping and like an SG&A or an OpEx
Yeah.
account. Because what's better than a 60% gross margin, 85% margin,
It's like
right? So
SaaS money.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That's what the whole point of the whole reason that D2C doesn't work with venture capital, and I've written 5,000 words about this, is they tried to look like SaaS, right? Like I have an
Yes.
85% margin because shipping doesn't count. I have recurring revenue because my payback period's 5 years.
Yeah.
So now they're talking about like recurring revenue on a high margin business. Like what people basically failed to underwrite between 2018 and 2022 was the fact that gross margins are not actually that high and the
Yeah.
revenue is not actually that recurring and the inventory required is actually quite crippling. That's the short of it. But yeah, it's a pretty interesting thing because like when you look at like the perfect D2C model and the
Yeah.
perfect SaaS model, they are actually very similar, right? Like if
Yes.
you have an 80% margin product that people buy every single month, it looks a lot like SaaS. It's a potentially very high earnings power business.
Dude, I couldn't agree with you more. I think the big challenge is one, speed, and two, scale. I think that's the biggest things that VCs missed about D2C, where a lot of these monsters just don't grow overnight because you can't. You just break like we're seeing this a little bit right now where the Irishib has just all these great little frameworks, but basically the muscle to generate demand and the muscle to fulfill demand are two totally agnostic things. And so if your marketing team crushes it, but you don't have the, whether it's account people to manage or whatever. If Iris got 1,000 accounts tomorrow, like that's actually obviously a good thing, but it's a bad thing because you just can't, you don't have the systems yet to service them, if that
Right.
makes sense. And so 10,000, whatever, pick the numbers. And that's analogous to inventory. And
Oh
when
yeah,
you're
for sure.
small with D2C, you're very rarely a price setter or a price taker. And so I actually had this happen when I was running accounts for a friend where he makes big orders out of this. He does like supplements, like gut health stuff, and he has his own formulas. And there were certain ingredients that basically they just cucked them and they're like, hey, this account that basically pays for this whole factory need these. You're going to have to wait another 3 months. And it
Yeah.
wasn't his projections or anything. And so that's the speed part of it. There's rarely, or Lululemon's arguably probably the best D2C success. They're not D2C anymore, but if you look at their revenue curve, it's not a hockey stick by any means,
No,
dude. It's
yeah.
just this absolute march towards this monster number. So I don't think they grow fast enough, and I don't think they grow big enough to
Yeah.
warrant the amount of investment. Where like when you're investing, this isn't like a P&E that I'm going to go take over a Red Lobster and carve it up and make some money. Shout out Cheddar
Yeah.
Biscuits. This is, hey, this needs to be 100x return, or I don't want a part of it because I need something to pay off the portfolio. I'm not investing for 5x.
And yeah, I think like when you look at like the growth of venture capital, just in terms of like AUM, like assets under management and venture capital, it grew so quickly over the course of the last, I think like 2005 maybe is like when I beginning of it. It's grown so quickly that there are not that many good deals. It's a lot of capital chasing very few like real, truly venture backable companies. And so when the D2C companies started to look quite a bit like software, some of the more potentially foolish investors were like, okay, like I can't get into that sweet software deal, but this shoe company is basically the same thing. So I should put my money in there. And to be fair, a lot of those vintages, 2009 to 2016, probably crushed it.
You made a lot
Like
of money.
the Lair Hippos of the world, the Forerunners of the world, those early D2C vintages did very well. They produced a
Yep.
number of public outcomes, a lot of M&A. Like Dollar Shave Public wasn't
Harry's
an investment for Unilever, but it was probably a great one for Kristen Green at Forerunner.
exactly right. Exactly right. So I guess landing the plane, how do you explain the importance to give us an example of me selling a bust or whatever? Like, how do you explain to me, dummy Rabah, that sells drewfallon.com busts online, like why I need to care about contribution margin or what do I do? I don't know anything about marketing. I just know that the contribution margin has two different names now because I heard it on the podcast, but I still don't know what it does.
Yeah, so in short, it's the lifeblood of the business, I would
Okay.
probably go as far as saying, because without positive contribution margin, generating positive cash flow is extremely difficult, not
Yep.
impossible, governed by a certain rate of growth. And if you want to be a sustainable business, like contribution margin and cash flows are the only thing that matter. It doesn't matter how fast you're growing. There's this idea of cash conversion cycle and how if you have a negative enough cash conversion cycle, you can experience contribution margin negativity and still generate cash
That
flow. Yeah,
that
yeah,
was like the
that's a
gym
good
shark.
example.
Very rare though. I tell people it's almost like when people say, "Oh, I can eat whatever I want." It's great. Like maybe you are LeBron James, but it's probably fair to assume that you're not, because like a negative cash conversion cycle is
Yeah,
very
I heard you start
challenging.
to say it. I heard you start to say it like I can eat whatever I want and not get fat. Yeah, but like but okay, wait till you're 35. That's actually a great little analogy. So yeah, people experiment with that stuff all the time. I actually generally don't advise cash flow conversion cycle like engineering, at least not in a huge aggressive way.
Yeah.
Like, sure, is it great if you can stay in like a negative day cash cycle? Yeah. Is it okay to be like 10, 30 days if you're like generating good margin? Yes, of course. We have a whole universe of credit facilities for that kind of a problem. Like this is an entire $1 trillion industry. So yeah, it's just like the contribution margin is effectively like the best way for a marketer to and I've been screaming this for years, the best way for a marketer to understand cash flow, given where they live inside the business every single day.
Yep.
And that is why people have latched onto it, because these marketers in these D2C companies, they understand finance very intimately. They just don't really understand that they understand.
Yep.
And they have this idea of contribution margin, which is like very easy for them to grasp onto, because it's derived from where the P&L end, where their job in the P&L end, profit and
Yep.
loss.
Exactly
As a
right.
marketer, my job starts at revenue and it ends at marketings, and I
Yep.
don't care about the balance sheet. I don't care about the cash flow statement.
Yep.
That is all I have. So
Yep.
for their context, they're on the right path, and it's not wrong. Their job is done. If they generate positive contribution margin, it's up to the ops folks to do all the other stuff in the CFO finance team to make sure that everything else is optimized. So yeah, it's a fantastic metric that everybody should run their business on if you want to make money.
And for you guys, are you guys selling into with, because one of the challenges I had with when I was running accounts and doing contribution margin is, again, not to beat a dead horse, but the shipping and handling, because we got billed every month, if that made sense. Because we
Yeah.
would just be on an invoice, you just clear out the month, and then that. So I would have a certain contribution margin, but then I would have at the end of the month when I would get the shipping stats in, I'd have to reconcile
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
into my spreadsheet. And then I was like, oh my gosh, I was at X contribution margin, but now I'm at
Yeah.
Y, and like the profitability starts to get hit. Are you guys bringing all that in?
So, Rabah, this is a genius point, and this is why Iris is not a ledger, right? Iris is not an accounting ledger. We are not competitive with QuickBooks or any of the AI bookkeepers.
Yep.
The AI bookkeepers are incapable of recording those expenses that you just mentioned in real time because they are
Yep.
not available in real time. So, therefore, in order to have perfectly accrual accounting ledger in real time is still impossible. It's remember like I said at the beginning, it's a data centralization problem. Data
Yep.
availability is table stakes. If there's no data availability, there's nothing to centralize.
Right.
So Iris has avoided becoming an accounting ledger for this exact reason, mostly balance sheet accounting and a certain type of accrual. So we make a good guess for it is the answer. Like we're usually
Love it.
within 1 to 5.
Totally usable.
Yeah, and if you have a ShipStation integrated into Shopify, like
Yep.
our system can pick that up in real time. So there's a number of different ways to estimate it. You can use some fancy ML to get a good guess based on the historical QuickBooks data or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, Iris,
Cross.
I tell people Iris is not does not make your accountant life any simpler. Honestly,
Yep.
it just makes your life simpler from like a strategic view, right? If my
Interesting.
profit and loss is 1 or 3% different and I can see it on June 1st and it's 1% different than what my accounting team comes up with 3 weeks later, it's not going to change it.
Dude, I would absolutely take a plus or minus 3% to get real time, or like
Exactly.
as close to real time data as possible. Cause a 1 to 3 point swing isn't existential, but me making a
Right.
bunch of sales, but my shipping person is charging me all this money, or I don't know. There's just 3 weeks is a long time, especially if you're cash poor, where it's
Yeah.
like you don't want to be burning $100 bills if you don't got them, kind of thing.
Right.
It's so fascinating. So marketers are some of the people like the sophisticated marketers are coming in and driving from this.
Yeah. So to be honest with you, we thought that the fractional CFO would be like our best customer.
Yep.
It's a lot of marketers. Part of what you can do in Iris is you track contribution margin, ad spend, CAC, MER, AOV, new customers, returning customers, etc., which are all financial levers of the business, but are
Yep.
all in the hands of these marketers. And so I would say, to our surprise, I don't know if it's for better or worse, honestly, at this point, but it is a lot of like growth marketers that come to us. Like Cody from Jones Road is like
Yeah. Yeah.
he's one of our most active and engaged customers. Like he loves Iris and he's not a CFO. But yeah, at the same time, like we're still generally trying to sell into the head of finance just because it is like
Yep.
very much like a budgeting and planning tool. But we're actually, it's like one of the things that, and maybe you guys have experience with this, but like user permissions idea
Yep.
where like the CFO wants to be able to set like the annual plan in Iris, but they want to
Yes.
be able to add their head of growth marketing to like the daily tracking of the spend.
Yes. Yep.
So it's becoming this like interesting like central operating system for a multifaceted department or like a cross departmental type mission. I think is like what we're learning.
For just selfishly for us, like that could also be like a not pivot per se, but more, but B2B is there's nothing really out there right now. Like we basically our VP of finance, we have a bunch of stuff like smashed together and stuff, but we have the same where it's basically she has to be fair, this is her world, obviously. But in terms of for me, I have my own little data. So I have like my own budgets, my own Looker dashboard, and then we have something else for actuals, and I'm like cross-referencing. Like it's a nightmare,
Right.
man.
Right.
It probably not as big of a deal because we're so much different in terms of business composition, where like D2C is so much more volatile. than SaaS is really, where you don't
Yeah,
have this.
that's why
Yeah,
I say like high velocity commerce.
that's
Like,
very well said.
yeah, it's like anything that transacts like multiple times per like hour. Like, dude, like as a D2C brand, like I can have a 65% gross margin like today and then run like account tomorrow and it's,
Yeah, but
and
make a
it's like,
bunch more money.
yeah, exactly. That matters. Like I run a SaaS company now. Like, would Iris be like a great tool for me? I don't know. Like I collect a certain amount of money every month and I pay my people a certain amount every month. So until
It's
those two
different
are like,
problem.
yeah, it's way more predictable, way more stable. D2C is, yeah, yeah, it's
That's a
like being
bar.
like a day trader. It's like being like
Yep.
a hedge fund trader. Like you're sticking your nose in the fucking Facebook ads manager for 10 hours a day, like
Yep.
absolutely optimizing. Like it really is.
I never thought of that because you're so right, because there's the volatility in our CAC is not really that acute because our CAC is pretty much amortized across the quarter already, if
Yeah.
that makes sense. We're very
Yeah.
rarely marketing is like that D2C brand. Like most, that had to be a weird shift going from, because most D2C people I know, they think in almost weeks and a month max kind of thing. And in SaaS, there's nothing less than a quarter. Really, like anything
Yeah.
smaller than a quarter is pointless because you're like, dude, I need time to cook, to marinate. There's just the sales cycles are longer, et cetera. Like
Yeah.
you just don't think in months, you think in quarters or like half years. And that was something that is really interesting when I juxtapose D2C to SaaS amongst a bunch of other stuff. But
Yeah. No, I totally agree. It's just a little bit more straightforward and slower on like the, to your point, like the sales side. There hasn't been like a SaaS company in the world that's acquired, you know, 60,000 customers in a month. Like some of these like scaled D2C brands do. It's a totally different ballgame. I totally agree.
speaking of different ball game, and totally agree. I want to jump into a couple of your analyses. You did the one, well, first the hymns
Well, did you
one.
see Hims? I literally
Yeah.
called Hims. It went up like freaking. It's been up like 40, maybe more. I don't even,
That's what I told you. Yeah. So we're recording this May 22nd. And what's hymns at right now?
taking a slide over the last couple of days.
Oh, you shouldn't have called it out. Are they back now?
No,
It's
it got
down 8.
crushed. But like,
Yeah, it's down 8% today. Damn it. I could have just fucking 2 days ago it was up almost 30%. But anywho, for people that don't know or that are just listening, not watching, so Drew Fallon 12 on the Twitters. I'm going to call it Twitter because I'm old, but he has these really cool deep dives into company financials. So give people the little podcast version of this. So this is dun, 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 the update with Drew Fallon. What do you think about a stock named HIMS? HIMS is
um,
the ticker. Give me the 3-minute spiel.
I've always been pretty bullish on Hims. I think I first got into it like 3 years ago at $10 or something. So I've been in the red.
Stop. So you
No,
two
well,
X.
no, I've been in the
Oh,
red
it did
for a
pop.
year, but I've held on to it because to me, it's one of those like categories and where D2C actually just makes sense.
Yep.
I think 90% something of their revenue is like recurring, and there's just not another category where that's honestly feasible. Like maybe Pet or like Chewy is like also a public company that has been able to reach
But
that kind of scale.
I lost a ton of money on Chewy's, not to bite your flow down, where pet gets fucked.
Where
What we were
gross
just talking
margin,
about. Shipping, exactly.
yeah, gross
Fucking
margin,
dog
yeah,
food is heavy to ship. There's nothing that medicine's
right.
not heavy. Oh,
So
sorry.
these Hims margins, this is Hims is actually the perfect idea of like what VC should have gotten into in
Into
terms of
yep,
like stickiness and margin. So like Hims is like it looks like a software business. Like
yep.
it truly does because they measure their like long-term retention in 24 months. So
Yep.
they're not even talking about like long-term retention. Can we keep people around for 2 quarters? Like they're talking about like multiple years of retention. And, like, when you have gross margins like that, like, I've always loved it because it looks like a software business, like, it really does, and it has a consumer-sized market. So some of these consumer markets are absolutely massive. I don't know
That's
how
a
big this.
bar. I like
Yeah,
that.
yeah, because it's software. I might be operating in FP&A, let's just say, is like a $5 billion
That's a
market.
bar. I really like
Skincare
that.
alone is 20 billion. I don't know how much weight loss is. Let's actually Google it. I bet you weight loss is
Monster, dude. The Novo Nordisk that makes these GLP-1 drugs just passed LVMH as the most valuable company in the world, or in Europe, excuse me.
yeah,
And the that's basically all they sell is insulin.
yeah. So, dude, 150 billion. The global weight loss market's 150 billion. The global skincare market, which is where you're seeing like not Olaplex maybe, but these massive companies that operate in skincare, like
Sephora's or what have you. Yeah.
150 billion is nutty. I think like the global like enterprise SaaS like analytics market's 60 billion. This
Yep.
is like triple that. So like you have this like software type model that works amazingly, and it's consuming a significantly larger market than any sort of B2B software ever could. And so that's why I've always liked it. And they came out and they reported earnings. I think I hammered the stock like right before the earnings just because I've always loved it and I thought they were like due to come back. And they raised their revenue guidance, they raised their earning guidance. These guys know exactly what they were doing because they raised their guidance to a certain point, 120 million of net income or something. So the stock's trading at 21 times at the time of the call, I think.
Yep.
And then 2 weeks later, they announced the Ozempic stuff or the GLP-1
Yeah.
stuff because now they're going to absolutely crush through the guidance that they just raised and the stock's just going to keep going up. So we saw it
Insane.
trade down here pretty well. That happens when you go up double in a day. So like everybody anticipated that. I'll probably get more on this here. It's a little
Yeah.
bit overheated, I think, but like long term thesis still remains the same. Like I'm just looking at some of the stuff that I made, like come up with CAC, for instance, $100. Dude, like they're literally paying $600 per customer. You know how insane that is? That can literally go forever.
It's incredible.
It's a beautiful business and it's the best sort of margin that I can think.
Yeah, and that was well done. We could tighten it up a little bit, maybe give you mile markers, but I think you're going to be giving Jim Cramer on Mad Money a run for the inverse Cramer.
You put me on
I
the
just
spot.
No, it was
They put
great.
all the
No, it
good
was
stuff in
great.
their presentations. You can get
I want to ask you a couple follow-on questions, but I thought this was such a bar and to take all those words and put it into a thesis and push back, but these are your words, so I'm pretty sure you're okay with this thesis. But ultimately, HIMSS is a critical distribution node for modern developments in medicines. That is such a bar. Like when I think of it that way, it, dude, like you just Googled weight loss, but what happens when they can basically sell anything, right? The Viagra's, like all these things, like all these markets. And you can, and honestly, shameless plug, this is like a perfect example for Fairmont, where you're going to have all these different people that have all these different product needs for different reasons. And I don't know, I think it's brilliant. And to your point, the unit economics never break because 90% of medicines are small and cheap to ship. That's where like the pets.com fell over. That's where the Chewy falls over. That's where all these liquid
yeah.
beverages fall over. That's why Liquid Death sells only merch on their website, dude. It's much easier for me to sell freight, but retail is really hard to get into. And so I have to sell water online, but shipping water online is forever. And there's no way to disturb those unit economic costs because it's big and heavy. Like I'm not just because you're buying more. Whereas a D2C, like I can put $500 worth of stuff in a $7 box. Perfect. Perfect. You buy 100, you buy 500.
Yeah.
My unit economics don't change. I still spend $7 where there's only so much shipping you can push onto it. So I love that. And I loved your idea of SaaS business economics applied to a consumer market. That really, to me, that's a whole fund. That's a thesis if I've ever heard one.
Yeah. Fine though. Yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely the show. The question I have for you is if you are like, if you're running your D2C business now, one, like where do you guys have like resources on Iris or like how can I get more skilled up in this kind of financial world? And two, what would be the first thing you would look at if you hadn't really audited your finances for the year? Is it putting your P&L together and looking at your gross profit? Is it looking at OpEx expenses? Like where can I find stuff on how to do this? Do I just book a demo? Do you have any knowledge stuff? And then a quick kind of recommendation for people at home listening.
I've got probably 30,000 words on this stuff that I haven't published. That's just like in the Google folder, like pretty useless. And I swear I'll
Dude,
get it.
put it in Notion and give it to people.
I got to. I have so many templates and articles, and everything that I like.
We'll,
I'm very
we'll
choppy with
sponsor
my
you. It'll be
content.
fun. We'll
Yeah,
sponsor you. I'll tidy it up. It'll be a dual effort. We got to get this out
that
into the
would
world.
be. That's like what I need just to actually get out the door. So no, we don't have anything right now. We will at some point. I think. As far as what I would do if I was trying to learn this stuff, it's like first question that I'll answer that you didn't ask, which is if you can even just have a slight semblance of like how to put together a 3-statement financial model, it will require you to learn how to think about revenue modeling. So new customer, returning customer, wholesale, right? Like how to think about those from a quantitative aspect, how to think about your COGS from a quantitative aspect in terms of like number of SKUs times cost per SKU at the most basic level. It'll force you to think about OpEx and how are we really fitting the OpEx into the net variable cash flow of the business, and with the remaining sort of leftover being net income. And then when you model out a balance sheet, it forces you to think about, okay, like what is that cash conversion cycle, and like where does cash go when it looks like that and versus when it looks like this. And so not everybody needs to pick up and become a banker right away. But even just like going through, there's like this resource called Dollar Cave Club by Troy Hennicoff, who's a professor at Northwestern. So if you Google Dollar Cave Club, he's got like this Excel
Illinois
template.
boy at heart. Let's go.
Yeah, he put together like basically this like really good course. It's one of the first things I ever sort of used, and I actually have gotten to know Troy a little bit over the last year or so. That just teaches you step by step how to model this stuff, and then once you know how to put it into an Excel sheet, you know how to think about it, and then you don't really have to do it again. So just it's more about just like learning it and not doing it all the time.
Yep.
But as far as if I were gonna like do the question that you did ask would be like, if you at least can have a cash based income statement, like at the very least, you can understand like what expenses your cash is going to. That's not sufficient, but it's a good start, right? So
Yeah.
just I can't believe I'm even saying this, but just have an accounting software. And Iris is not an accounting software, right? So this is not a pitch for Iris. Just have a QuickBooks account, have a Xero account, a NetSuite, where you can at least just see what you're spending money on. Because I guarantee you there's a lot of things that you're spending money on that you do not need to be. And conversely, places that you're spending money that you should be spending that are better spent, dollars that are better spent elsewhere. So just having an eye or a pulse on, hey, this is the cash that was in the business, this is the cash that went out of the business, this is why it went out. Okay, let's work from there.
And if I have all this stuff but don't want to do it and I come and sign up for you guys, do you guys help out with this, or do I need to get all my shit together before I come to you?
We help out with this. This is actually an increasingly good business for us. So like we can help you, we can point you in the right direction, we can structure everything. And then once we do that, our software will automate the rest of it.
I love it. I love it. Okay. One last question and then we'll let you go. Man, this has been good. You've renewed my love for finance. Like I never had a disdain for it, but it was just always, especially when you start going down, and no offense, like the accounting aspects of it, it just is so dull compared to, but without that dull, you can't have the exciting like thesis building or like seeing patterns and stuff. So it's this weird kind of, do the basics before you can do the fun, crazy stuff of, oh, this is why hymns could be a monster because I'm matching this and that. Okay. Last question I ask everybody at the end of the show. What is your equation of excellence? What do you think excellence is a function?
I think more than anything, it's a function of like dedication, I suppose, or discipline. I think there's a lot of like extremely like smart people out there that like maybe are like less dedicated than like they could be. Conversely, there's like a lot of not so smart people that like
Yep.
have spent a lot of time doing stuff. Like people, you don't have to be a genius, but if you just learn and read and care about stuff, you can get pretty good at what you want to do. So I think as far as excellence goes, it'd be like find something that you like care about and then don't give up on it. Like be dedicated to it, right? Because not everyone's gonna have a ton of interests, right? So if you do find something that you are interested in, like commit to being interested in it and then become excellent at it. I think the best because it makes it easy, right? Like, nobody wants to be excellent at something.
Yep.
Right. So identify what you like and then commit to being dedicated to it.
I love that. My man got bars. Says the coffee came with the mic. The back setup looks great. Wilbur
I bought
didn't
this mic
bark.
because of you. Because last time you said that that my audio sucked, so now I have a $200 mic.
Let's go. Send it. Drew Fallon, thank you for coming on the show. You're just one of the best humans, dude. We'll talk offline because I think there's definitely some financial stuff that we can do. Because the other thing that's interesting to me is being able to not only skill up this cadre of marketers and business owners, but also agency owners. I think agency owners getting more involved in the partnership of, at least to your point, like understanding the why gross margin matters, what to do, because not all revenue is created equal. And if you're running a bunch of paid ads to really low margin products, it doesn't really matter that you're selling a bunch of them because you're not keeping a lot of that money versus when you could be running them to high margin products, et cetera. And I think there's just a lot of service area for us to spread that beautiful knowledge sauce.
Yeah, there's everyone's coming into stuff. I see a big pull from agencies. I see a big pull from operators. The finance people have always been talking about it, but It's time to get fit. Time for 2 years.
It's a new year, new me. It's
Yeah.
May, but hey, got to start somewhere. Day one or one day, you choose. Drew, where can the people find you? How can they get more involved with Iris? This time is yours, my friend.
Yeah, so I'm on Twitter, Drew Fallon 12. I think Rabah gave me the little plug earlier. Bro, I started on LinkedIn too. I do that now. Not much, honestly. Follow me on LinkedIn or connect me on LinkedIn, whatever. And then Iris wise, we do free trials. And if you go to the website, you can get a 2-week free trial and just have a demo. And either me or my co-founder Alex will hop on the phone with you, get you all set up, and then you'll be off to the races. We have never had anybody do demo or free trial and then like product. There's really nothing to lose. But that's my famous plug. God damn it, I'm such a stash.
I love it. When you send in emails with the HubSpot connector, I was like, my man came to the dark side. Get your shill on, baby. It is all good.
It really is like that. It really is like that.
It is what it is, man. You're making people's lives better, helping them save money, pay for their kids' school, buy the Range Rover. You're enabling dreams, Drew. You're enabling dreams.
I should tell them. Yeah.
That's exactly right. Go check out irisfinance.co. Wonderful human. Go follow Drew. He really is doing an incredible job on the content, and I'll figure out a way to squeeze this knowledge into some sort of product that you all can consume, because I will be consuming it as well. This man knows finance like none other, and he's a hell of a human. Dude, tell Wilbur hi. Thank you so much for coming on, and this has been great.
Yeah. Thanks again, Rob. Always a pleasure.
All right, folks, make sure to go to formatcommerce.com to book a demo so my boss doesn't fire me. We do a bunch of really cool stuff if you want to make the money printer go burr. We also have a great newsletter you can subscribe to, Geometry of Growth, also on the website. Awesome. That's another show in the books. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.